To this evening's council and committee of the whole meeting for December 19th. Bienvenue à notre réunion de conseil pour le 19 décembre. Before we open the meeting officially, we kind of have a special surprise here for everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to our last meeting for 2023. It marks our first full year working together. And I think that it's a great opportunity to highlight and celebrate that, and to thank you all for your contributions around the table and within the community. The back wall in council chambers here used to showcase the current and former councils. And, we were really running out of space to add new frames. But also, I think it's really important that we recognize that the work that we do here is not about us as individuals, but about the communities and the people that we serve. So with that, we are unveiling new artwork for the back wall of council chambers. So the back wall here has been created by local artist Howie Longfellow, and is based on the artwork that shows up throughout our communities in the highway signs and welcome signs into places like Cache Bay, Verner. And he took the elements of the different community signs that we have and joined them all together to be representative of West Nipissing as a whole. It's really my hope that the mural inspires the people who step forward into council chambers to consider the people, the stories of our community, and to respect the residents and their backgrounds, as well as our predecessors who worked hard to build West Nipissing. I think what's nice about this sign is that it does take the elements from the individual community signs and blends them all into one for West Nipissing. So I think it's lovely to have something like this in our public space that really fits the vibrancy and energy of our council. And I think that it's a great new addition to our council chambers. With that, we will move to open the meeting. I've been elected by council to do land acknowledgement tonight. As we meet today, I would like to take a moment to recognize the importance of the land on which we are gathered. The municipality of West Nipissing respectfully acknowledges that we are located on the homelands of the Anishinaabe people, on the traditional territory of the Nipissing, Temagami, and Doki's First Nations covered by the Robinson-Huron Treaty. We honor and recognize their historical connection to the land, and value their significant contributions in shaping and strengthening our communities. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility towards reconciliation and improving our understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. We have no addendum this evening. First, any declarations of pecuniary interest for tonight? Seeing none.
It is moved by Councillor Rastoul and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that the agenda for Council Committee of the whole meeting held on December the 19th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. And this evening we are receiving one petition, the information of which is contained in your council information packages. And that is a petition for guardrails to be installed on Laverne Drive. That will come back to our next council meeting for discussion. Thank you. And we'll move into committee of the whole. To start with, we have our Economic Development Committee. Councillor Crushane, who is our Chair of Economic Development, is not with us this evening. So I will ask Councillor Rivard, who also sits on the Economic Development Committee, to chair in his absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have a BDO zone project update, and I'll pass that forward to Mr. Poulet.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Economic Development Advisory Committee met to discuss this project as was directed by Council. And as I provided to council a brief memo and a copy of the resolution that the committee passed back on December 6th. And the committee is recommending to council to not proceed with this project at this time. There's funding attached to it, so that's why we're seeking direction from council as a final decision on moving forward with this project or not. What was discussed at the committee are aspects related to what potentially this designation could mean to our community, a regional approach, partnership with the private sector, and because the BDO zone designation does not only pertain to our community, it looks at a broader region and determines the amount of biomass available on the forestry side. And then once the rating is given, if you get a favorable rating, then obviously that could boost opportunity in the forest industry. If you don't get a favorable rating, then that could have opportunity shy away from our community. And we felt that if we end up getting a good rating, what does that mean? Are we investment ready? Are we able to officially start attracting investors and looking at opportunities? Committee discussed the housing plan, the workforce availability, and basically recommending to council that at this time, they're recommending not to proceed with it, but that they do want to keep this type of initiative on the table, but a more focused regional approach so we can contact our neighboring communities, we can contact the forestry companies that really have involvement in this, and have a more concerted partnership approach moving forward once we know that we're investment ready to start attracting these types of investment in our community. So I leave it to you, Mr. Chair. But we are seeking final direction from council.
That was a pretty good summary, but I'll open the floor to any comments.
Thank you. Both myself and Councillor Rivard were in attendance at the Economic Development meeting, which was just a week ago, I guess. And we called it specifically to speak about this opportunity. As Mr. Poulin indicated, we did receive funding confirmation that would cover approximately half the cost of this study, which in total is about $112,000, and we were approved at 55, I believe. But it really was felt that whether or not it was the municipality's sole responsibility to fund something like this, where there are benefits to private sectors, where there could be benefits to other communities that fall within the kind of catchment area of the study. So whether you're looking at Martin River or French River or North Bay, whether that was a really good investment of our taxpayer dollars. And, that I think that was why the committee felt the way it did at that time. So that's all I would add to that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else. So at this point, since we're seeking direction, it would be a show of hands of who would agree with the West Nipissing Economic Development Committee's recommendation. That's the word. A show of hands.
Got the right.
I'll pass it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Next, we do have a couple of items under our Public Works Committee. And for that, I will pass it to the chair, Councillor Barney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first item on the under the Public Works Committee is the recommendation to put a three-way stop on the corner of Levesque and Cadre Road. Information has been in your packet. So I don't know if Henning, do you have anything to add to the documentation you shared with us?
Add to this.
Yeah, anything to add before I open it up for questions?
No, you can open up for question.
Perfect. Okay, I'll open up the question to Conseiller Saint-Louis.
Can we just probably clarify it's not Casbury Road, it's Cash Street. It's Cash Street.
Oh.
Casbury Road and Levac don't cross.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Singh.
So I, obviously living in that area, is there going to be any type of work done to that corner? The reason I ask is, depending on where that stop sign will be, it might actually, and I agree 100% with a three-way stop there, but depending on where that stop sign will be going north on Cash Street, it might, if the stop sign is too far into the corner, or if it's too soon into the road, people will proceed and if you go, you'll see it's very confusing. So I'm just wondering if there'll be any type of work done to that road to maybe take away from the angle that's there already to make it more of a, a true three-way stop. So I'm just wondering if that's a possibility or if that's an option that's going to be looked at.
At this point, we don't have, we're not looking at that. We're just looking at the stop sign, and the stop sign would be installed as per regulations. So there actually are regulations on where it would have to be, and they have even like those types of intersections. So we will follow that and place it accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did drive a couple of times Saturdays down that way for Levac Road. Now Levac Road just comes down straight, and then Cash Street kind of has a little loop. So is it possible just to have one stop sign on Cash Street? Because really it's to determine if those are going left or right. And Levac Road, you'd be turning or going straight, and same with the opposite direction. I'm just wondering why we need 3 stops instead of just the one.
Yeah, I did look at both options. And because of the fact that it is on a skew and the sight lines there are really not very good, that's why we determined to put a 3-way stop instead. Because if you're coming on Levac and going east, you really have to come like right up before you can see there. And if you're coming on Cash, like you really have to come right up before you can see. So it's just safer if we have a 3-way stop there with the amount of traffic that there is and with the intersection being on a skew. If it were a straight T intersection, I think that would probably be the way to go. Just put one stop sign.
And just one more question is, if there's a stop sign to allow you to turn left, can you have like the other lane as a yield sign to go through? Would that make it
So like
it's set up
a yield sign on Levac or on
Cash Street? So you'd have a stop sign, and then because the road kind of goes this way, so your stop sign would be used to really turn left, and then the yield sign would be just be able to move up to be able to see if there's traffic coming.
Well, then you'd have yielding to the traffic that would be stopped on Levac. So you would have,
Well, Levac wouldn't have a stop sign, just have Cash Street stop sign to go left, and then because it's kind of merging, maybe a yield sign to the right to just turn
with
right.
the amount of traffic in that area, I wouldn't be recommending a yield sign there. If that were a smaller road and there were less traffic, we have a lot of traffic coming out of Cash, and you have a lot of traffic going at a fairly, I mean, I know it's only a 50 there, but people drive a lot faster than that. So, and there is a collision history there as well. I've got a letter of support from the OPP and from Chief Loughlin here that they have, in I think last year alone, there was 2 accidents at that intersection. So, and then if you go back further, there's a higher collision history.
Thank you.
Councilor Bristol.
Through you, Councillor Chair. Just if we're gonna, I know I used to live in Cache Bay a long time ago, and just said this at another meeting. I feel young, but I'm getting pretty old, so it feels like I'm getting old. But that aside, it's been like that forever in terms of the one-stop sign and flow of traffic and stuff. If we're, and I agree and I'm supportive of putting in for safety concerns that, can we put in any additional lighting? And by lighting, I mean just maybe like a flashing light on the new stop sign, because, you know, we've all lived here a long time, and I think it's going to take people a little bit of getting used to having new stop signs there. And I know there's a lot of traffic that goes through there to Living and out to that part of the municipality as well. So I'm just wondering if we can put in just something a little bit more visual for even, a period of time just to get people used to it.
Yeah, as per regulation, when we put up a new stop sign, you have to put one of those stop sign, like new stop sign ahead signs. So there will be warning. It won't just go up as a stop sign.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you very much. I agree that this is a good idea. We've seen a lot of growth within Cache Bay and even right along Levac Road right now, because it does turn to 70 shortly after that. There's now quite a few residential houses between Cache Street and Arcan where it increases. And I actually think it's a good idea. People are still in highway mode when they take that corner and start coming down Levac Street. And I think a stop sign there to kind of put them back in out of highway mode and into people actually live here mode is good from a psychology point of view as well. So I think it does address some safety concerns. I drive on that road quite frequently, and when I'm returning home and coming eastbound, I always find it difficult. You really have to be careful that you're not going to hit any traffic coming up Cache Street and making the curve. So, I from experience, I can completely understand the safety concerns that you're looking to address here. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other questions? Yeah, Councilor St.
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Chair. When Mr. Councillor Restoul was talking about it a few seconds ago, he was talking about the lighting. And I didn't even notice, I've been living there for 40-some years now, and I didn't even notice on the corner how the lighting is at night. Do we know if it's fairly visible for the stop signs? Because I know at one point, on Cache, the lights will stop. So I'm just wondering on that corner, how the lighting is for night. So, I'm not asking right now, but if we can look at it to make sure that people do see the stop signs in the evening.
Yeah.
I'll check when I go home tonight.
And stop signs are reflective as well. So I believe that intersection is lit, but stop signs are reflective. So even if there aren't lights there, your headlights should illuminate that stop sign.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just drove by there and I was thinking that actually when I saw this on the agenda, that when you're going west towards Living on Levac Street, I thought it was a little odd that there wouldn't at least be a three-way stop or at least a two-way for the people coming north on Cache. If they want to turn left to go towards Living, right, they actually don't have a stop. Then if you have someone coming this way too, thought that was a little odd now that it's been brought to my attention. But in terms of the lighting, there is actually like 3 or 4 street lights there, because one of them is pointing on top of the Cache Bay sign, and then one's kind of on the corner as well. So it's fairly well lit, I think, but for that concern.
Thank you.
I just had one other comment, and it's kind of off topic, but the other intersection that reminds me of this, like a similar kind of askew, is a drive-in road in Savarin, and I wonder whether that has been looked at, because I find that a really difficult corner as well, because you have a lot of curves, you have this similar issues with sight lines, and there's a stop on Savarin, but it's straight through on drive-in, but Savarin actually runs straight off drive, so it's a really awkward askew corner, and I wonder if we could just, while we're talking about these kind of weird, dangerous places, if Public Works could come back with something on that, whether that would be another one to address.
Yeah, I can take a look at that one.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other questions? Show of hands, everybody in favor of putting a 3-way stop there? Good. Thank you very much. The next item is a petition for street lights on Saint Joseph Road. So I don't know if Ms. Henning, you have anything to add to that item? Nothing to add. So we received a petition to put some street lights on Saint Joseph Road in the River Valley. So I'll open it up for any questions or discussions. Conseiller Pedrin?
Thank you, Councillor Gagné. The $6,000, is that for a complete new posts or?
No, that's the light. A new post would be upwards of $10,000.
Okay, so just the light itself is $6,000.
Yes, plus the ongoing maintenance costs and electrical cost.
What's the cost per month to operate these lights? I'm just curious. With all the lights we have around, what's the cost per light that Hydro charges us, or?
Well, through you, I think Lisa can speak to it, but we have, we pay Hydro through two organizations, Sudbury Hydro for Cache Bay, Sturgeon Falls area, and our Greater Sudbury Utilities. And then we have Hydro One. Our total bill, that's where you have this.
So we actually get individual bills for all the new streetlights we add. They don't add them to our total group, but our streetlights are between $40 and $65 a month.
It's a flat rate.
It's not a flat rate, no. No, it is still a consumption based with all the delivery charges and everything else as well, yeah.
More than I thought.
Questions, Conseiller Pedrin?
Not for now, thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Conseiller TC?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Considering the date of the policy is back in 2006 and revised 2011, is there a possibility to review the policy as far as security issues with respect to maybe the policy needs to be updated before the request for the lights be reviewed?
So
Just-
Conseiller TC, what I'd recommend is either we defer the subject and request to review the policy, and once we do, then we can bring back the petition, but it's a council decision if we want to do that. Because according to the directions from our director of infrastructure, she's not recommending because of our current bylaw for streetlights, which is technically what we should be following as council.
Yeah, but also the concern regarding security, vandalism, and providing licensed school bus. So a question is, was it during the day that you attended the area to see about the traffic?
It was during the day, but I will also say there's lots of comparable roads or roads with more traffic and more houses on them in West Nipissing that don't have streetlights as well. For example, Dutrasac Road doesn't have streetlights. Evansville has no streetlights. So there's quite a few areas where I have a lot more traffic and a lot more pedestrian traffic and higher speeds of traffic than this location, and they don't have streetlights.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Conseiller Pedrin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just coming back to the amount of those lights per month, is there, like, with all the LED lights right now, it's 1/10 of the cost it was 10 years ago. Did Hydro adjust that in the last few years to the municipality, or?
So through you, Mr. Chair, for streetlights, I can't think off the top of my head. We are certainly seeing savings at our facilities from the transition to the LEDs and things like that, like significant savings. The streetlights, I can't think off the top of my head, Councillor Pellerin, how much of a difference we've seen. So I mean, a lot of the streetlights, you know, within our existing, so our large pool of sort of, you know, Sturgeon Falls and Springer, and then we've got Burner and Field that had streetlights to start. I don't know how far into transitioning those lights, you know, GSU would be. So yeah, I can't tell you if we've had a lot of savings on streetlights the same way, but we certainly are seeing savings in our facilities with the LEDs.
Because I'm just thinking, if nobody checks Hydro's gonna keep charging us the rate that the old lights and the new lights, like we all know, it's way, way cheaper. Just throwing it out there, just.
No, we do get charged on consumption, and so it is consumption changes. Now, some of our really old streetlights are based on the type of streetlights. We are charged per light. Those are some of the ones that used to be attached to buildings and things like that. A lot of our new stuff is on consumption though, so it is reflected then in consumption.
So each light has its own
Yeah,
meter?
yeah.
Really? Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Resto.
You, Mr. Chair, I have a question about costs. Just kidding. We've had some good questions about costs. I think I support the recommendation from staff, and like you mentioned, we're following policy, right? And that's what it's there for. And at the time, we have this decision in front of us. If it is something where we want to review a certain policy or policies moving forward, but I don't think it would be good practice to start delaying decisions based on reviewing policy, because who knows what else policies that we'll need to review in the future as well. So I think with this being in front of us now and having a recommendation from staff, I'd support what's in front of us.
Should there is some request to have a look at the policy, and certainly that's reasonable, and we can certainly bring it back. I do agree with you that you're making a decision now, but it isn't necessarily if the conditions in the policy change, and if council agrees to change conditions in a policy that would change the warrants that Public Works would study it, then certainly this and other issues can be brought back given the change of circumstances. But off the top, we have to be very careful, as Ms. Henning indicates, with respect to adding that. We certainly will debate it, but adding something like that with respect to the security, where it's dark, we're a very sparsely populated area, and that could, I think there's a certain onus on the residents to light up with automatic lights and that kind of thing to protect the properties as well. So, but that'll be a discussion for when we bring it back.
Thank you, Mr. Barbeau. Any other questions? So show of hands if everybody in favor with the recommendation that we have in front of us. Thank you. And maybe we can bring back the policy or the bylaw for review. Yeah. And perfect. Okay, I'll pass it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. And then finally, in our committee of the whole for this evening, we do have one item under the Social Services and Health Committee. And that is a draft of a extreme weather response plan for that. I will pass the floor, pass the chair to Councillor Resto.
Madam Mayor, so as you mentioned, just the one item on the agenda, extreme cold weather plan. And in our packages, we had a copy of the plan itself, public response plan. I'm going to just go really general, and then I'll ask maybe our CEO if he can provide a little bit of background to how the document got finalized. But generally, the document talks about the introduction, cold weather health impacts, Environment Canada cold and winter storm warnings, coordinated community response, which is probably the most important piece that individuals in the community be looking for, public communication and education, and related sources that were used to develop the document. So if I can turn it over to our CEO for a quick.
No, I think thank you, Mr. Chair, and if I'm missing any details, I'll pass it off to Ms. Raddick as well. But I think the policy speaks to itself. I think it's important to distinguish when Ms. Craddock in September brought extreme heat. This is extreme cold. One of the reasons for certain delays is I think even at the staff level, we were conflating issues with respect to warming centers, which is still something that is a very much more complex issue to have permanent centers such as that and permanent solutions. So I'm still working with our partners. I was asked to provide updates, but given a few health setbacks and what have you, I had a chance to speak to one local partner who's very supportive and willing to assist in any way, shape, or form. But I think we're still at the point, and hopefully I can get to the social services and discuss that. So this plan works a little bit like any other emergency. And so I think the operation of this plan, should we have sustained cold weather periods, would work such as our regular emergency management plan, where we would convene the emergency control group with the various parties that have an ability to impact. We would then implement the plan, the communication strategy, have the specific facilities ready with the appropriate physical and human resources. And we would also be working with our partners, social service agency partners, to work with us at that time should anybody who are availing themselves of the service need additional warming after hours. And then we would then be having it, such as any plan, it's a fluid and we make adjustments on the fly. We would then be working with our partners to identify those individuals in need and make the appropriate arrangements for either accommodation or whatever social services does here, and or having some facilities or having transportation to where warming centers with social services exist. So this would be still a partnership on the after hours and during as well, with respect to depending on the target audience. So we would be convening our emergency services director, our staff, our facilities people, our communications people, the mayor, and other pertinent agencies that would have the ability to assist and impact positively, such as social services.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'll open the floor for any questions from any members of council on the document. Councilor Desi?
Thanks you, Mr. Chair, through you. So the details of the plan, like who identifies the people that are not sheltered that would need assistance? Would they contact the emergency number if it's after hours, or what's the process? Because there's no
through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest to you that that's why we would convene those parties involved responsible for identifying target groups, and it would probably be no different than identifying them on a regular basis through Choose Self or whatever is happening now. Our point in this is not necessarily is to communicate as broadly as possible, to communicate with our partner agencies and those involved in the actual handling of the emergency, and let the partners take care of the portion of what they need to do in terms of identifying. I do recognize that a certain target group are not surfing the web and or reading the newspaper and or listening to the radio. So obviously the framework would be to identify and make sure that that is in place. But the generality of the plan speaks to there's some specifics on certain things we would be communicating to folks and to have them prepare and to get ready in a general manner. Because as was indicated in the extreme heat plan, it's not simply those who are homeless that may be in need. Like I've heard of a story just recently, without being specific, of some of our staff having to attend to a home where there was no heat, and they found somebody in there very cold and addressed it. So there are instances where there's individuals that would need some assistance with warming. So again, this is a fluid plan, and that when we know, and we usually know with enough certainty and degree of error, we won't err on the side of safety. If it's going to be close to the target temperatures, we shall be convening and making sure that those who have a stake in target groups are prepared to identify and assist.
And just one last question. So you mentioned Through Self. Now we know we have a group here as well, No More Tears, Grassroots. that do meet with them more regularly than through self? Would they be a group that you'd be communicating with, or you want them to communicate with you as far as identifying?
As it is right now, Councillor Tessier, though very well-meaning, and I met with the recent treasurer of the No More Tears group, who's attempting to formalize. But until there's a group that is formalized for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the liability and of the individuals involved, in addition to the way we have to handle things, we would be going through the agencies such as True Self. And if it's True Self comes in on a Wednesday, but it's really cold on a Monday, then I would be identifying with the social service agencies that we need to mobilize for the cold weather. How the social service agencies choose to do that would be their responsibility, not ours.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any other members of council? Madam Mayor?
I just wanted to ask about the threshold that's been identified in section 3.1 at -40. I understand that that is the recommended, or that is the threshold identified by the Government of Canada in how they issue weather warnings. Is there, I believe -40 is really cold, and whether or not our plan might look at a slightly lower threshold in order to consider the safety and well-being of people who could be at risk, because I think there's a significant risk at -30. I think there's a significant risk at sustained temperatures of -25. So whether or not, I know that for the Government of Canada to say it's severe cold, it is -40, but for the sake of our response, or when our response is triggered, whether there would be a benefit to lowering that threshold a little bit.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly, when we bring forward a document like this in a draft form, it becomes a discussion piece for council to agree. The issue is, I certainly agree with you that -40 is very high. And for me, -2 is very high. I just get cold easy now. I don't know if that's an age thing, Mr. Chair, way more than you. Having said that, when we lower it, and there could be a threshold that's lower than that, please be aware that we then get into additional frequency and cost. And so when we're going to be opening, say, Marcel Noel Center as a warming center, then we're going to be doing it more often, and we're going to have to staff it for the entire day more often, provide certain refreshments and issues. So, yes, we can reduce it. Perhaps what we can do is bring forward, if council's in agreement with the framework, and come back with maybe a historical frequency analysis on certain set points so that council can be informed as to what the implication is to staffing and to resource implementation. It then gets back into, at a certain point in time, and I'll make 2 cents, it's certainly not an argument against you or against your point, Madam Mayor, but there's 2 points I'd like to make. This would be the first time we ever do it, and we've been in it 24 years. So the other thing, but we do evolve. The other part then gets into that general philosophical framework as to who should be doing it and what resources should be available. So when you're getting too low, are we now treading on what the idea of a warming center? And I haven't, and I apologize, it's just 2 weeks sometimes when you get sidetracked, you just can't get to the people you want to get to, especially before Christmas. But I still have the intention of reaching my counterparts to have a discussion as to how we connect and have a local response or a local solution for West Nipissing on the general thresholds for this and other things.
Thank you for those questions, responses. Did you have a question? Council? Council?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Is there a way or a possibility, and I didn't read through the whole thing, but as I'm reading the cold weather, extreme weather alerts for Canada, which says -40, but nor does it say, is that with wind chill or without? Because as of a couple days ago, when it was -7, with the wind chill was also -15. So there's a big difference, right? So if it's -25, it could be -40 with the wind chill.
There might be a
Should we
definition
specify that?
before I answer. I'm guessing that if there's a wind chill of -40, we're probably going to treat it such as -40. Yeah, but I don't know if,
I just want to make sure
Braddock,
that-
is it different? It's not a hard -40.
No, and it actually does reference the wind chill.
Okay.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes,
Through you,
Councilor.
Mr. Chair. I have a question about section 4.2. It'll actually apply to both the cold and heated facilities. Sorry, for both circumstances. We mentioned public libraries and the arenas being temporary shelter during hours of operation. But would the staff be receiving extra training should at-risk individuals be coming in? Like, should a problem arise, who will be dealing with it? I'm just wondering how that would work.
So that's, through you, Mr. Chair, that's where we would be, if approved and part of the liaison, we would be looking at that. But what we would be having is a safety protocol and a response protocol. If we deem certain of our target group to be at risk, or we would be using the police and police response and a variety of different things. We'd also put procedures in place with rules to follow, and we would be watching that very closely, and there would be communication with the staff. Now, it may not be who you think with the staff, could be, it could be volunteer firefighters if it's deployed as an emergency. It could be volunteer firefighters and not community services maintenance workers. So the specifics of that would be worked out, and we're still going to work that out as we flesh this out with our social service partners.
Okay.
Excellent. Councilor Tessier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this document is supported by the West Nipissing Emergency Plan as well.
I don't understand the question.
Um,
It would be an adjunct document that would be, so the West Nipissing Emergency Plan talks about risk. I don't know that we've ever identified cold as risk, Councillor Tacey, so you raise a very good point. But the same process for treating any emergency happens. There's an incident command. There's a control group of key individuals. The individuals who are part of who take the lead on certain aspects. Perhaps it's Mr. Poulin if it's facilities. We would kick into play. I've been responsible for a bunch of mock disasters. Responsible for mock disasters? I participated in mock disasters, and I've also unfortunately participated in real events such as the power outages, the windstorm of 2006, I believe. And so I know for a fact that the framework works excellently. We did also utilize the framework for the pandemic in terms of mobilizing and making changes. And so the coordination of all the people in the room tend to work really well. Now, is it incorporated in the emergency plan at this point? I don't know that it is.
For the cold weather, it is part of the risk analysis in respect to extended periods of power outage and winter conditions.
But if approved, this would be also part of it as we would be using this kind of protocol within our emergency plan.
So just a subsequent question is the definition of an emergency that's in the plan to allow the mayor to consider it as an emergency to get assistance from other governments. Wouldn't that apply? Like, definition does state an emergency means a situation or an impending situation caused by the forces of nature, an accident, an intentional act or otherwise that constitutes a danger of major proportion to life and property. These individuals not being sheltered outside is endangering their life. So
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that you might be entering an interesting philosophical discussion. The other part of that declaration, though, deals with the ability to track and provide funding, and there are thresholds that would kick into play. And we've never actually, in any emergency, reached that threshold of expenditure. I believe the last time we had an emergency, the threshold was about 450,000-ish, and we spent about 350,000-ish on a ton of gravel to make sure people had egress and or access on some of the lakefront properties. But to make a philosophical point, and not to, I don't disagree with you, but when you're talking under the emergency plan, that's a very specific definition under Emergency Measures Ontario. And if we would be declaring emergency just based on that, so would every municipality that's under the same weather pattern. So there has to be a serious loss of life potential and that kind of thing. Now, I'm not suggesting, as per what we're saying in the plan or in the draft policy, we're not suggesting that we wouldn't treat it as an emergency. It's just that the mayor wouldn't declare. We would be still convening. And that's what the beauty of this policy is we don't have to wait for an emergency to happen. We're going to be proactive by putting the appropriate people in the same room.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, I just wanted to provide a couple of comments, and as you mentioned, Mr. Barbo, with the mobilization of social service agencies, I think in some of the discussions that we've had in the last month or so, they've been very open to, and it was kind of exactly like the example that you gave, if they have a set date where they come into the community weekly and there is things that are changing or moving parts, they're more than welcome or more than willing to mobilize and come in and the services are available to those who need them. So I know we've had that discussion, we've heard that. The other piece was just on the data, and I'm sure a number of our partners in the social service world would be readily available to provide some of that data, so that would probably ease that a little bit. And the other last point was just I like, you know, how we talk about access to information and notices or emergency notices, and I think this was in our warm or heat policy as well, was having our public-facing municipal personnel sharing that information as well, and some of the outreach communications through our Bylaw Fire and DSAB and other community partners. So good work in getting that in there as well, where it's not just newspaper, radio, or emails or web. I think there's a good proactive step there to make sure that we're using every outlet that we have available to share that information when we get into those situations.
Right.
Mayor.
Couple more.
Yeah.
As far as the threshold temperatures, so North Bay has their warming centers, and on when I'd like to see if our temperatures that we've defined are consistent with either when DSAB opens, like the bus terminal and such, and whether it's consistent with North Bay, since our service provider
I think we may have
is
that
regional. So I don't know if you have that answer.
I don't have all the answers, but that's where, you know, we did struggle with kind of the blurring between warming centers and the extreme cold response.
Mm-hmm.
So DSAB does assist with running these with the supporting groups that run warming centers with the shelters and all the rest. The city of North Bay opens the bus terminal. They recommend people go to the mall and things like that. So which is a separate response than the warming center's response that the agencies run. So it is that distinction. And no, sorry, Mr. Barrow, I don't have the number for when I did have the number, but off the top of my head, I don't have the number for when North Bay triggers that they will then keep the bus station open, but it is a different threshold than the warming centers and all the rest.
Well, and I think that, at some point, DSAB will declare that the warming center, which the regular hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. When they're facing an emergency there, they will they extend that to be open 24 hours. So when whatever the threshold temperature, that's what I'm wondering is that at some point they open that warming center throughout the extent of the cold weather emergency, as well as having the bus terminal location available. And so that's their kind of extreme cold response, but I don't know what the threshold is for North Bay or DSAP to activate those services, because we would probably want to be consistent with them so that those facilities are available.
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
the slight difference, as you know, and what we've been kind of advocating or defending is that they already have those services in existence and are already open. And so they're just directing people versus we are mobilizing services that are not generally open to the public and are making a change. And so it could be that working with our partners, and we would come to you and inform you, of course, that if the resources were made available by social services to extend our hours, perhaps that could be a solution as well. We just have to work with them to determine that, and it would be on kind of on an emergency basis. Okay, what do you plan? No, we can come and open this, okay? But you know, as we're indicating, we will come back with a kind of an analysis or sensitivity analysis with respect to dropping it to -35 to dropping it to -30, and seeing how many winter events that would affect us historically. And then, because in our opinion, we're looking at 3 to 4 events per year, perhaps on average, and depending on the event. And we would look at, you know, probably somewhere in the area of $1,000 to $2,000 a day addition in handling this. So, you know, we're looking at about a $7,000 to $8,000 emergency expenditure is budgeted.
Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one more question about 4.2. Are we set in libraries? Like, does it have to necessarily be the libraries, the arenas, the Marcel Noel Hall? Because I know this sounds like I'm being difficult, but from the perspective of a parent, and you're walking into the library for your mom and tot programming, and it's not what you're typically used to, it might take away from the programming. People might not want to go, and I would hate to see the library lose people attending.
There'd be two answers to that. I think the document, I don't have it in front of me, I'm scrolling, and as soon as I scroll, I lose it, don't know where it is. I think it says may include as well, so it depends. So there's that. The other thing, though, is that if we're deeming it a quasi-emergency in an extreme cold weather, then the priorities, and if it's -40, if you start lowering that threshold and you're adding a frequency, then you're really inconveniencing those users of the facility to a degree. I think that every user of a facility from a human perspective would understand, you know, what is at stake. And we certainly would be monitoring volumes and assisting people if too many people are coming here or what have you. We'd be assisting them to get to a larger area. But your point is well taken. It really depends on what the size is and what our needs are. And the other point I'd make is that it'll be a first for us. So we're kind of shooting blind here as well, right? We have not had this policies before you because it doesn't exist, and we've never done this for our group. Somehow all of those who have had difficulties have seemed to find solutions or manage. But we are now evolving and we're putting in extreme cold weather. The other part of warming centers is probably an evolution of the realities we've been facing recently, but that will be a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Councillor Pellerin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, there was something in the North Bay Nugget last year. The mayor, Cherico from North Bay, there was an extreme cold called, and they, at that time when it's called, there's not an incentive, but there's motels available for people when that's triggered. So is there something like this here? Is that go to DSAP or is that?
Yes, it is. So through you, Mr. Chair, that is, and that is also the case that happened even in general with the encampments, is that there are motels in place. But the cold weather response we got last year, and no offense to DSAB, but when we called, which was kind of unacceptable to us, was that we'll just put them in a cab and send them here. Well, it's kind of, well, that's all well and good, but who's identifying? How is that happening? We need to have a place to, a way to figure that out. And that's why, yes, that is available, but it would be in working with our partners. So that's why during the day and knowing ahead of time that we would have a cold weather on January 10th, it's going to be, let's say it's still minus 40, we would then convene and we would be looking at every potential scenario, realizing that our scenario for the time being in draft form is only during the day. And so we can't just say, okay, it's 4:30, go outside and freeze. You know, that's kind of not probably a good idea. So, you know, we're going to have to be working and finding creative solutions. And that's where the control group is a great mechanism to convene very quickly, gather people together, and have discussions and find solutions.
Thank you. I was wondering, maybe Mr. Risco knows that through DSAP, was that just a one-year thing, or is that a rule that's established? Because in the article too, it said like there's a cap that they got so much money for motel room, but when there's an alert triggered, the cap is lifted. You're going to receive more government funding. Is that an ongoing thing?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it's more government funding that comes in. It's more use of resources that DSAP has available to them. They do use, and it's in our document here too, but I'll just try to stay focused and answer that question. They have a certain amount of hotel rooms that are available. They have a certain amount of shelter spots, the low barrier access center. But once those fill up for these kind of extreme weather situations, then they lift the cap and they work, you know, within their budgets and within other funds that they have readily available to make sure that people who want to get access to hotels for these extreme weather situations are able to. So during the year, they have a regular cap amount, but then in these situations, they do lift that to make sure that those who want service, it's available to them.
Okay, so they do have like agreements, they know which motel to go, but we've got nothing here, like with the Comfort Inn or another small motel.
I can go back and check. I know speaking with them last year, there was, and during the pandemic, and there was some challenges with getting business owners to, you know, to buy into the program, but that's their choice, right, as business owners. But it was raised there, and we can raise it again in terms of following up to see which community partners in terms of the hotel business are willing to participate in it.
Okay, thank you.
And I just, my last two comments, and it's a great discussion, it's good, is just, and I think Mr. Barbo mentioned it in some of his comments, but we just have to stay focused on what this is. This isn't a warming center. This isn't a shelter. It's an extreme weather policy we have in place, and it's good. It's a new first step for us because we haven't engaged in this in the past, but this is what that is, right? Working with our partners, and it's in this document in certain situations, and the example that was brought forward where you have people during the day, but what happens at night, and that's where you engage your partners like DSAB and other service providers to make sure people are safe, you know, in the nights of those cold, extreme situations. And the other piece that's related loosely, but not specific to this, but I just wanted to share, because in our other discussions that we've had around the homelessness issue and supports for that segment of our community, I have been involved in budget discussions at DSAP, and I've said this before, it's going to take a little bit of time to get things in place, But DSAB is open to having those discussions and seeing what we can develop in terms of whether it's a low barrier shelter or a warming center or something along those lines. I'd say probably not likely during this winter season because we're already almost in January, but they are open to having those discussions and they've asked, and I've waited until and it hasn't been long. It's not been we met late last week. So it's been a couple of days. We're going to engage in those discussions and start working at getting something in place in terms of that kind of supports. But I just wanted to be clear for our discussion, that's two different things we're talking about here. This is the extreme weather policy, and I think it's good. It's new, and we're taking positive steps to help community members here in West Nipissing. So if there aren't any other comments, yes, there is.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add that I think it's important that we realize too that this isn't only one demographic that would be using this extreme cold weather, similar to the extreme warm weather. Some people aren't homeless, but would still require this emergency or non-emergency act as well, because there are some people who just can't heat their homes at the same levels as others. Their homes aren't as efficient, so during these extreme cold weather events, they do need a place to warm up. So there's a little saying that I always really like, and it's don't let assumptions limit your solutions. So this is where we can trust our staff and our associations to kind of help us find solutions for this problem. And this is, like was mentioned, our first time we're diving into this as a municipality. So as we've said with other things, we could always come back and look at changes that could be made. But I am leaning very strongly on the side of, I think the threshold may have to be lowered a little bit, but I'm waiting for that review as to how many days this would be. But that was just something I'd like to add for us to remember when we're making our decision here. It's people come from all ends of life. There would be all sorts of reasons why this would be needed. So if we just keep assumptions out and remember that we need to find a solution for these cases.
Excellent. I appreciate all the comments and conversation around the table, and thanks to staff for your contribution to this document. We'll have the couple of tweaks to it. We'll have some information to follow up, but with that, I'll end my part of the agenda, and I'll turn the chair back over to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the great discussion on that item. We'll move on to item 6, our regular meeting, and we have.
It is moved by Councillor St. Louis and seconded by Councillor Restool. Be it resolved that the consent agenda for the Council Committee of the Whole meeting of December the 19th, 2023 be approved as presented.
Any questions or comments on those items? All in favor? Carried. Okay. And next, under 6.3, we have correspondence. The Public Health Unit, I think. Yes. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to this item. We just include it for information. Okay. So we received this correspondence. I will add that we did have a motion not too long ago supporting not supporting it, but supporting action against intimate partner violence. It is a topic that's being raised across the province as an issue. So that information has been included from the health unit for your information only, and no action is required to be part of council at this time. Okay. 6.5, we'll move on to new business, and we have a resolution.
It is moved by Councillor Restool and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Whereas the West Nipissing Municipality has received a request from the Centre Communautaire de la Vigne Board of Directors seeking financial support for the completion of a safety fence at the Living Multi-Use Park and Playground. Be it resolved that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality supports the Centre Communautaire de la Vigne Board of Directors' request for their proposed safety fence and allocates a sum of $25,000 to help complete the project.
We'll discuss this at our last committee of the whole. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor St. Louis and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-101 being an actual cost bylaw to amend bylaw number 2020-05 for the Pocket Drain F in the municipality of West Nipissing shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Is this the first time we've had an item like this come to this council?
It might be.
Could we get just an explanation on the, like a brief explanation on what it's about and what it means?
Through you, Madam Chair. So as we've talked briefly, and hopefully we'll get into some training in the new year, with municipal drains, there's a variety of steps. This is actually the last step where the project has been completed. All the bills have been paid, and we confirm the actual cost because all the prior bylaws are based on the estimates, the engineer's estimates. This is the actual cost and the amount on which we will bill the ratepayers and the various parties assessed for payment on that drain.
Okay. Any questions in regards to these? This one specifically. Okay, all in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor Restoul. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-102 being an actual cost bylaw to amend bylaw 2023-67 for the Poitras Drain 1972 Delorme Minor Improvement Project in the West Nipissing municipality shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Thank you for the previous explanation. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, and with that, I'll just move on to try to keep it very brief mayor's report. As I mentioned in the opening of our meeting, our unofficial opening, this is our last meeting for 2023. So it does mark the end of our first full year working together as a council and with our staff team. So you want to take an opportunity to first thank our staff team. Because when we started a year ago, all of us except for our esteemed deputy mayor had no experience sitting at the council table. And that had meant a lot of work and a lot of training and a lot of explaining on the part of our staff to get us up to speed with everything we needed to know. And we're not quite there yet, but we're a good step ahead of where we were a year from now. And for that, we need to thank the expertise and the patience of our staff team who's worked with us through this year. Secondly, I would like to thank each and every one of you. It has been a really great year. It's been big. It's been very busy. And I know that each of us has had to put in that equal amount of work of learning the job that we have to do here. And I think that you've all done a great job, and it's been a real pleasure working with all of you. Last week, we hosted our seniors supper, traditional senior supper for the first time since 2019. First time for our council doing it, and it was, in my opinion, a fabulous event. Everybody looked fabulous. There were a lot of very nice looking people in that room, dolled up to the nines. The kitchen was full of our staff and other volunteers, some retired staff, Jacques from the Chateau and Sue Lebeau from the hospital, serving up the plates. And we had our councilors and other members of staff serving the plates on the front end to our seniors. Really was a fabulous evening working together with all of you. 450 tickets went out, and there were people on the dance floor until the band wrapped up and left. So I'd like to say thank you again to the staff team, to councilors who showed up, and to all our seniors who came out to make it a great party. It was a really awesome event, and we really enjoyed doing it. And the last thing that I'd like to talk about is to give big kudos to our firefighters who have done a fabulous job again this year with their Santa Fund. They will be serving 127 families and 268 children in our community with baskets that will make Christmas a little brighter for a lot of people. The distribution is going to begin in the smaller communities on Thursday and continue Friday in Sturgeon Falls. And so I'd just like to congratulate the firefighters for again putting in a lot of volunteer hours to make Christmas a little better for a lot of families in our community. So thank you very much to them. And with that, I will wish you all and your families a very Merry Christmas, however you celebrate. One more thing Madam Clerk is reminding me of. There will be no meeting on January 2nd. So our next meeting at council will be January 16th. And with that, I will wish you all, however you celebrate, a very happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, and all the best for 2024.
It is moved by Councillor Restoul and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-103, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm its proceedings of council at its meeting held on December the 19th, 2023, shall come into force and take effect on the date it is passed.
All those in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor St. Louis and seconded by Councillor Restoul. Be it resolved that the meeting of council held on December the 19th, 2023, be adjourned.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you again.